made a series of very bad decisions, and I cannot make another one.
Why did you make these decisions?
For the good of my family.
Then they weren't bad decisions. When you have children, you always have family. They will always be your priority, your responsibility. And a man provides.
Hi, I'm Joe,
And I'm Tiana,
and this is Next Door Villain.
a podcast where we uncover the villains to discover their humanity. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Next Door Villain.
Yeah, hey, we are this week discussing, oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Good save. Gustavo. Gus.
Gus.
Fring.
You had kind of like a twang there. Gus Fring.
Fring. I don't know the
Fring.
I don't know the correct Chilean enunciation.
I do not either. Yeah, we wouldn't really know, Jill.
Anyways, Gus, if you don't know, is a major character in AMC's award-winning series Breaking Bad, which has been over for almost a decade. So we're a little late to the game here.
We are, but it's still in my heart, I promise.
Yeah, it's a great show. And I actually watched the entire series after it had already finished.
Yeah, I watched the entire series up until the second to the last season before the last season came out. So kind of like you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then you just binge watch it on Netflix until you get sad, depressed, excited, nervous, all at the same time until the end.
Yeah, it was honestly a pretty rough period in my life, those 3 weeks of Breaking Bad.
And I bet watching that wouldn't have helped.
No, I that's why it was rough. 4 or 5 episodes a night for 3 weeks will really put you in a rough place.
Oof, yeah.
Gus, though.
Gus.
Yeah, he's not in the entire series. He's only in, a few seasons?
Right.
But he really made an impact on the audience. He really stood out to a lot of people. He's actually listed on a lot of people's top villains of all time lists.
It's fascinating to think about why so many people like Gus.
Yeah. And I think we're going to get into a lot of those reasons today. But we should get started, I think, with our 30-second intro challenge where we compete to see who can do a better 30-second introduction of the character, because a lot of our audience might be like me and didn't really remember a lot of the details or specific information about Gus.
Right. And the beauty of recording so close in time together is that I remember who went first last time with our 30-second intro.
I believe it was you.
Yeah.
Oh, so that means I have to go first this time?
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult here to condense such a complicated storyline into 30 seconds.
I know. Well, it's whatever it means to you.
Yeah.
Improv Rule 101. Don't have to say all that. If you don't want to, you can say something else about Gus rather than what happens in the show. I don't know.
Okay. Wait. Well, okay. So I can say whatever I want for 30 seconds.
Actually, you probably could. As long as, I don't know. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Gus is the owner of a small chain of restaurants called Los Pollos Hermanos. He's an upstanding member of the community where he lives, but deep down he has a secret. He's actually basically a drug lord who runs this business, and he uses his chicken restaurant as a way to funnel drugs in and out of the U.S., but he's very cool and calm and collected, and he's very, very smart and intelligent and a very, very good businessman.
Very good.
Thank you. Your turn. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so Gus Fring is a man who, of course, as you know, sells meth. We believe he is from Chile, but he has a very He has a past that a lot of people don't know about, and we're not even quite sure if he has kids or not, question mark. And he's very much wanting to use Walter White's type of meth because Walter White cooks very good meth, but things quickly fall apart. And Gus is left with trying to kill him.
Good. I think these were some of our best intros yet.
Yeah, I think maybe we're getting some practice in.
Yeah.
This is what, probably our 15th time maybe doing it?
Oh, 20 some.
Wow,
Yeah.
we're experts.
Yeah.
We should have listeners do 30-second challenges.
Oh, yeah, that would be fun. We're going to post that on Facebook, so look out
Yes.
for that. We have a voicemail line you can call into, and maybe you can do our intros. That's a great idea.
Yeah, we're recording right now, so maybe you're just saying it's a good idea because you have to, because people are listening, but...
No, I love it. I hope
You generally
people
like it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, I think I like Gus Fring more than you do.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I really struggled to empathize with this character for a lot of reasons. But I was really I was taken aback at how difficult it was for me to empathize with him because we've been doing this podcast for so long now, and we have empathized with some pretty terrible villains. Jafar. Ooh, he was a rough one, but we did it.
Right.
And I don't know what it is about Gus that was so difficult. And I'm thinking maybe a part of it is that he's so realistic. The actor who plays him does such a brilliant job with him. And there's nothing particularly ridiculous about him.
Mm-hmm.
He's cool, he's collected, he's calm, and everything he does seems within the realm of possibility for someone to do. I mean, it's still pretty astounding, all the stuff that he is able to do, but he really could be the dude who runs your local chain restaurant. And I don't know.
And that's cool to think about.
It's cool.
In a weird way.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's also terrifying.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons it's so terrifying is because his actions have such real world implications, especially with the drug crisis and the opioid crisis that's going on in the world. The fact that he is selling these drugs, we don't necessarily see the impact, but we know that drugs go into communities, poor communities specifically, and tear them apart.
Right.
And that's just so hard for me to reckon with.
Yeah. And I definitely get that. We've mentioned this, several times before, that just because we're empathizing with the villain doesn't mean that we support what the villain is doing. Mm-hmm. And in no way, shape, or form do I support someone being a drug lord.
Yeah.
Although I do kind of support someone owning a chicken restaurant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or some kind of restaurant. I asked my boyfriend why he liked Gus Fring, because he really likes Breaking Bad. So I asked him, why do you like Gus Fring so much? And kind of a way to try and gauge, get more feedback. And he was like, I think Gus is cool because he owns a chicken restaurant and I love chicken. I was like, very in-depth. But no, it is hard to empathize with him.
Yeah.
But I still think empathizing is powerful,
right,
because it can sometimes help defeat the villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to complicate my feelings even more, just last week I was listening to an episode of Invisibilia, which is an NPR podcast, which I highly recommend. I think the episode was called The End of Empathy, and they really kind of dive into the negative side of empathy, which is something I hadn't really thought about. I've always considered empathy to be all good.
I know.
What could there be wrong with empathy?
Mm-hmm.
But they certainly had some interesting perspectives on it. And one of them that I was really impactful to me and made me really kind of reconsider what we're doing a little bit was that when we empathize with a villain, it has the ability, consciously or unconsciously, to minimize how much we care about their victims. When we start to like someone or understand someone, it makes it more difficult for us to be passionate and go out and do things to help people who are victims. And so one of the things they talk about in this episode is that people nowadays, as opposed to 20, 30 years ago, are still empathizing, but instead of empathizing with bad people, young people today are starting to empathize more and more with people that they agree with and people that they think deserve empathy, as if it's like a resource that we can run out of, which I don't know if I buy into that entirely, but it's just something interesting to think about. So I was wondering if when we empathize with Gus, do we risk forgetting about how much of an impact he has on his victims? There's the victims that he kills pretty blatantly on the show, but to me, the worst part about what he does is the victims down the line who these drugs are being funneled to and who are being taken advantage of in these communities that are probably being destroyed because of the meth that he's bringing in.
Right. And yeah, I see where they're coming from. It's hard to like go out and try to empathize with a Nazi, right? Because like, why would I give that empathy to them? Same thing with Gus too. Why would I give my empathy to Gus? So I get it. I do. And of course, I'm a little biased because empathy is my number one strength according to the StrengthsFinder test, if you've ever heard of that. So if people are like, oh, you shouldn't be using your empathy for that, or you could run out of empathy, then I would come back and say, I've never ran out of empathy before. Or, like me empathizing with someone doesn't mean that I agree with them, and me empathizing with them does not cancel out me empathizing with the victim. Of course, maybe there are some kind of psychological studies of maybe I could do that subconsciously where I don't think about the victim. But I think maybe if we just apply that and learn from that episode, I guess it's just a reminder that when you empathize with the villain, it means that maybe you should take a few minutes to think about the victims at the same time.
Yeah. I like what you said a little bit earlier about how we can also use empathy as a way to take down villains. You said something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Like, we should empathize, but we should be conscious about how we react because of it. And the way we react to people doing terrible things when we empathize with them is to use that understanding of them in order to affect positive change.
Right.
One way to do that could be helping that person to stop what they're doing. But another way could be going out and fighting them, because when you know your enemy, you know their weaknesses better and you can better defeat them.
Right. And what's funny about Breaking Bad is that, in a way, you could argue that Walter White used some empathy when trying to defeat Gus, although his motivations were not really to make positive change. His motivation was to make positive change for himself, like to win himself, right? It wasn't really to stop the spread of meth. It was... The motivations were a bit different for Walter White, but in a way, he kind of used it. Of course, he understood Gus's feelings and Hector Salamanca's feelings, as to why they hated each other, and used that to his advantage to wheel in Gus with a trick. And boom, 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 ding, 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 he dead. And so I guess Walter White, as a fictional character, has a pretty high IQ, and sometimes he shows kind of a high EQ at the same time. Sometimes, not always. It depends. We're not talking about Walter White.
Right. Yeah. No, but I see what you're saying. And Walter often takes advantage of people via empathy. I think Jesse in particular gets used by Walter so much, and Walter takes advantage of him by faking, I don't know, maybe faking, maybe not, empathy with him for stuff that he has going on in his life.
Oh, yeah. There is a dangerous side to empathy, and I guess it depends on how you use it.
It's a tool. Empathy is a tool, and tools can be used in any number of ways. Correctly, incorrectly, to do different things.
To make a podcast.
Yeah, a hammer can be used to push in a nail, but it can also be used to bash in a head.
Good analogy.
Thank you. I just
Fabulous.
came up with that. But I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable saying it.
Violence is hard.
Anyways, back to Gus. I think that I'm still struggling to empathize with him, so I'm hoping that you can kind of talk me into it. But I think one good way to do that we've done with a lot of people is to just kind of take a look at their backstory as much as we can, or as much as we're able to. So I was wondering if you could talk us through that a little bit.
Before I get into that, though, I want to share a random thought
Okay.
about Gus's workaholicness.
Okay.
This kind of goes into the podcast in that you can kind of appreciate him for his work ethic.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry. Not always for great things, but when I first started watching Breaking Bad, or when Gus appeared, and I knew that he was running a chicken restaurant and a cartel, I was like, how does he sleep? Like, is he on Red Bull the whole time? Like, how do you have the time to run a cartel and run a chicken restaurant at the same time? Well, I guess they kind of go hand in hand because he uses the chicken business to kind of cover his grounds or to mask what he's doing.
I mean, running a business is hard enough on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Running two businesses, the cartel and the restaurant, extra difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then on
Right.
top of that, navigating having to keep that all a secret.
Yeah.
I mean, I struggle to navigate having one job and a couple of friends.
And you don't have to shoot any of them. Oh, sorry.
No, true. Yeah, his work ethic is certainly commendable. Yeah, and truly impressive, despite the fact that it's going to some negative efforts.
Yeah. I guess that means that he's pretty good at delegating tasks.
Yeah, well, and also he's, from what we see in the show, pretty decent to his Los Pollos Hermanos employees.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be nice to them. He seems to be a hands-on boss who cares about his employees.
So he has good leadership skills.
Yep.
Very cool.
So for me, I'm still struggling to really grasp on anything solid to empathize with. But one thing that we've done in previous episodes, and we do often when we're trying to empathize with people, is to take a look at their backstory, how they became who they are today. And we don't get a ton of information about Gus, but we do get some. And I was wondering, I think you did a little more research than me, if you could talk us through what we know of his backstory.
Yeah. Well, we don't know much. And I got this from the Breaking Bad spinoff show, Better Call Saul. And
Side note, I love Better Call Saul.
me too.
Maybe even more than Breaking Bad.
Yeah. I like Better Call Saul because it's a little more lighthearted,
Yeah. not
not so depressing. Well, we'll see. We'll see how later
Right.
seasons go. But
There are some pretty depressing moments. Anyways,
Yeah.
sorry, back to your
right.
backstory.
So I've only, watched up to season 3 of Better Call Saul. And we learn that Gus supposedly emigrated to Mexico during the Pinochet regime in Chile. I apologize if I mispronounced that. There's some kind of implication that he was quote unquote someone in Chile and no one really knows. But a few characters have referred to him as Grand Generalissimo. I did not study Spanish, I'm sorry. So you kind of go back to his backstory where he first kind of started hating and getting into kind of a feud with Hector Salamanca, which is where he and his partner, Max Arciniega, go to a cartel that distributes cocaine to ask them if Don Eladio, the cartel drug kingpin, to ask if they can distribute their meth along with his cocaine. But he didn't really like it too much, didn't really take it too well, and he orders... Actually, I can't remember if he orders Hector Salamanca to do this or if Hector Salamanca just did it. But Hector Salamanca killed Max Arciniega. And what's important about this dude is that they're partners, and Gus, well, that they were partners kind of in the drug business, and Gus really, 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 really seemed to love Max Arciniega.
To the point where people wonder if maybe they were in a relationship.
Right. Right. There's a theory out there.
We have no evidence either way, but the point is they had a strong relationship.
And Max kind of says, he tries to defend Gus before he gets shot. I know Gustavo like a brother. He's an honorable man. He rescued me from the Santiago slums. And we also find out that Gus paid for Max's chemistry degree. And it's almost like he has some kind of very intense loyalty and goodness for people that he loves a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Hector Salamanca kills him begins this whole feud, which then also, informs the next trail of occurrences in Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Just to summarize, Gus is this dude in Chile, and he and his partner, romantic or otherwise, go to this other drug dealer, Hector and Don Eladio, and they're like, can we sell drugs? And they're like, no, and they kill Max, and now Gus is like pissed
Upset.
at them. Yeah. Okay.
Pissed to no end.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think there is, a little bit of justification with his emotions there, where like he seems rather ruthless to Hector Salamanca, and in Breaking Bad, that's all you kind of see.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, why is this guy so mean to Hector Salamanca? He like comes in and just tells Hector that his family is dead, or like members of his family is dead, just as if it's another chill day. But you also have to understand some of the pain that he's dealing with when he sees Hector Salamanca in that chair dinging his dingy bell.
I mean, this may partially answer a question that I had, which was, why is Gus running a major drug operation when he is such a skilled, talented businessman? That it seems like he could be a successful, rich owner of a chain restaurant and doing just fine on his own. But maybe this is part of it. Maybe it's a lot to do with this chip on his shoulder he has over the fact that he lost someone who is very close to him. And maybe it's his own empathy for the people in his life that he cared about, in this case, Max, that's tying him into this business where he wants to defeat, outshine those that harmed him and the people he loved.
Yeah, he wants his cartel to come out on top. That and Gus is a little bit, seems like it's weird. He seems like a sociopath sometimes, uncaring about other people's feelings, which then helps him be a drug kingpin. But then on the other hand, there's parts of him, but like you said, there could be other reasoning for why he's in that business. Also, I think he thinks, or he knows that he's smart enough to do that challenging of a business. What if he was just bored?
Right. Well, and we've talked about this before with other villains. Villains are often really smart, and often they feel like outcasts, and they will sometimes then turn to alternate routes to get the attention and notoriety that they're looking for, because they didn't fit in, or they weren't able to get what they were looking for through traditional means. I don't know. Maybe that's the case here. Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to tell, because Gus also operates very logically as well. But there's a soft side. Okay.
Yeah.
Anywho, loyal, determined. I've seen other fictional characters like this before, where they're just loyal to no end to the person that they love.
Yeah.
Even if it means doing horrible, horrible things for that person.
And actually, so to go back to this, what I was talking about earlier with that Invisibilia podcast about the end of empathy, one of the really interesting points that they brought up is that we often think of terrible people, like leaders of ISIS or Hitler, as people who are not very empathetic. But in fact, they may be incredibly empathetic. It's just that their empathy is for the people that they believe they care about. And they're so like they care about their group, their side so much that they're willing to do anything to get what they want and what they need. And I think we see that a lot. I thought about this when you mentioned the loyalty thing, that we see a lot of characters, good and bad, in a lot of different mediums, do ridiculous things because they are so loyal and they care about people. And that's that powerful empathy for the people that we care about, which leads us to do things that seem bad, non-empathetic towards other people. So I guess that is the danger of empathy, is it polarizes us when we're too empathetic towards one side and not the other.
So in Gus's case, he's so empathetic and so much care for Max that he doesn't give a fuck about anyone else, really.
Yeah.
Wow, that kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, I was like, whoa, is this interesting thought coming out of my mouth right now?
Yeah, because if you feel so much for one type of person, or one person, or a small group of people, you can see how that can be dangerous. But it'll look admirable at first. Like, it'll be like, wow, you care so much about this group of people that you're willing to do anything and defeat anyone that comes in their way. But then eventually it becomes dangerous. Whoa, that's a good thing to our listeners. Catch yourself if you start fighting people. No, I don't know.
Yeah. So a major plot point in Breaking Bad is Gus's death.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the best parts. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's this iconic moment where he walks out of the hospital room after the explosion caused by Walt, which we'll get into a little bit. So he walks out of the room and he looks fine, and then the camera pans around, and it was just that the side of his face that we were looking at looked okay. But as we pan around, we see that the other entire side of his face is blown off. And the last thing he does is he stands there and he adjusts his tie, and then he falls over dead.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a real testament to who he is and
Right.
how much he cares about his presentation and how he looks to the world. But there was a very complicated series of events that led to his death, which starts with him meeting Walter White, obviously the titular
I don't know what that word is.
the main character in Breaking Bad.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how he had the ability to walk out of that room as a half man. But yeah, impressive, resilient. So Walter White's ego is pretty inflated and feels he feels Gus is trying to weed him out. Gus is very good at saying, you can never trust a drug addict in the business, because he's very logical and very calculated about that. But then he kind of witnesses Walt be loyal to Jesse more than he is to Gus, because he kills some drug dealers to help Jesse, basically. That actually kind of work for Gus.
Yeah. So Walt, how they met is Walt was looking for someone to distribute and to work with to get his drugs out into the world and make more money.
Right.
But Gus actually didn't want to work with Walt because he saw Jesse and said, Jesse's a drug addict and a wild card, and I only work with good business people. But Walt talked Gus into letting them work together, despite Gus's trepidations about the situation.
Right. And Walt doesn't really like Gus a whole lot, because he only wants him there for 3 months and then to get him out and then use Gale to kind of learn how to cook his meth. So that's another reason why Jesse kills Gale, also causing mistrust between Walt and Gus. And so there's a lot of mistrust going on where Walt is trying to get the upper hand, even though the deal was that Walt was going to cook for Gus for 3 months and get $3 million for it. That was the deal. And Gus knew that was the deal, and he expects loyalty from that deal, especially because he's getting paid a shit ton. And so, Gus needs to operate a business with loyal people. And that's kind of partly why Gus is starting to try and kill Walt, is because he's seeing this mistrust. And Walt wasn't supposed to retaliate. And, I have a supervisor at work and I don't get paid $3 million. But I'm expected to be loyal and do what the deal is, do what my contract is, and get paid for it. That's the transaction. And so Gus is like, why are you, I don't understand. This was your deal. I don't know what you're doing. Obviously, Gus is going to be upset that you weren't loyal to him when he's paying you that much money. I don't know. It's just, I follow orders better.
Yeah.
So you can just kind of see from Gus's side as to why he was going to start to kill Walt. Also partly because he knew he was going to die of cancer soon, but which then in turn made Walt kind of defend himself. And in the end, Walt won when he killed Gus.
Yeah. It's a complicated situation, but really what it comes down to is that Gus didn't want to work with Walter because he seemed like a wild card, and Walt talked him into working together. And then Walt ended up being a wild card because Jesse messed things up. And then ultimately, I mean, really, when it comes down to it, the reason Gus died is because he met Walter and decided to work with him, and it was a bad business choice. He ignored his instincts, which were good.
Yeah, it's a shame. In a way, Gus was right the whole time that he should not have
Yeah.
worked with Walt and Jesse.
I mean, it's a shame if you're Gus.
Mm-hmm.
It's less of a shame if you're the DEA.
Right,
Or,
right.
you know.
Yeah, but it was just about power, and Walt ended up spreading his territory because of it. So I think, whenever I watch Breaking Bad, which has been a while, I kept thinking about, like, why does someone so logical, you've kind of asked this question earlier, why does someone who's so logical and very calm and collected want to run a cartel and do such awful things? I don't know. To me, it felt like Gus didn't think of running a cartel as a criminal activity. He just solely thought of it as a business. It's just that society thinks of it as criminal, and he just needs to act quiet and accordingly in order to hide in plain sight.
Uh-huh.
Did you get that sense?
Yeah, I definitely get that. And I don't feel that it's possible that Gus could fully understand or fully recognizes the implications of his actions. Because if he did, he wouldn't do them.
Yeah.
So he must think of this as a business venture. And I wonder if a way that he could justify this in his mind might be just to think about what other major corporations are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be honest, they're not much different than him. When we think of a major drug company that's selling opioids, how is that much different than the drug business that Gus is running?
Right.
Or even to expand more broadly, what about companies that are selling terrible, crappy sugar processed food at extremely low costs to people who don't have much money, so they can't afford to go out and buy good produce, good healthy food? They have to buy the cheap stuff, and these companies go out of their way to market it to those people and to make the price so low and get people addicted to that food, and then they gain weight, and then we have heart issues and health issues. How is that worse than what Gus is doing? If anything, it's more or less the same thing. It's just that they're a major corporation that's spending tons of money to be out in the public eye and look really good, despite the fact that what they're doing has a really negative impact on the world.
Yeah, and they're illegal. It's legal for them to do those things. And so Gus is probably well, society thinks this is illegal, which is strange because there's all these other, unethical CEOs out there doing things that are looked at as legal. So legality doesn't inform good or bad. Not always, anyway. And I think a lot of those CEOs, I think they think in a very, libertarian way. Okay, maybe not libertarian, but I think a lot of these CEOs, including Gus, might also think in a very live and let live type of way.
Right.
You have the freedom to smoke meth or get addicted to meth, just as how you have the freedom to eat processed food. So it's okay for us to do that because people are just going to do what they want anyway. So I might as well just provide them with the product.
I get where you're coming from with the libertarian kind of value.
And to Gus, maybe he thinks that a lot of those people who are addicted to meth are already addicted anyway, and him not distributing meth isn't going to change anything.
Yeah, or maybe he's the safe distributor.
Right.
Maybe his people distribute in a way that he doesn't hire bad, unreliable people who are going to take advantage. I don't know. I guess I don't know that much about his business, but knowing Gus, I can imagine that he hires decent people who are going to show up and who are going to charge the price that he sets, and who are not going to kill people sporadically for no reason. I don't know. I mean, this is all kind of a stretch to me, but
right.
But I'm trying.
Yeah, it is a stretch. I'm just trying to get their mindset, they're already addicted. That's probably partly what part of the mindset could be, although I don't agree with it. But so if it weren't Gus, it'd be someone else.
Right. And the reality is we should be upset with Gus. We should be upset with every major corporation, more or less, for what they're doing. And so I'm conflicted. Can you tell that I'm conflicted today?
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted too. I mean, anyone listening to this could kind of see how we're kind of talking through our thoughts. Like our thoughts are not even like solidified.
Yeah.
You know, it's a process, and we hope that your brain is kind of going along with us in this process.
Right. To be honest, I don't like solidifying my thoughts.
Same.
You know, like, it's not always good to like commit
Mm-hmm.
to a specific thought line. A lot of the time, we just need to be open to considering. When you commit to a specific idea or a specific thought, you're blocking off the opportunity for change, the opportunity for influence from others. But you should be open to that. You should be open to other people and other opinions and other ideas.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Stamp of approval. Okay. But not solidified. Another random thought that I had to maybe think about motivation is, I guess I kind of mentioned this earlier. Why would someone so smart want to do this? Like, couldn't he do a different business that's legal and then get just as much money almost? Maybe not as much. But I was like, if I were that smart and had that much time on my hands, like, you can see how being that, and this is kind of the whole point of Breaking Bad too, kind of another reason why Walter White, one of the reasons why he became who he was, is that if you're smart, you might as well make something of it that's more unique, to where you're not sitting in an office for like 9 to 5, Monday through Friday until you're 75 years old.
Yeah.
I can see how it's more appealing to have so much control and power in 2 different businesses and have money that you can just swim in because it's power and it's highly addictive. And I don't know. I can kind of see how someone who's smart in some ways would think maybe being a drug kingpin would be better. I don't know. I'm kind of stretching it, but yeah.
In general, I don't want to make too sweeping of a statement, but I think that people like to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like to be bored. I would rather have an incredibly stressful job where I'm busy all the time than a job where I'm sitting in an office with nothing to do for an entire day. And I've been in both scenarios, and I can certainly understand if you are super intelligent, super smart, have a lot going for you, and you don't have a challenge, how that could be so difficult and so draining on you. And maybe Gus, he just went and created a challenge for himself.
I've been in both situations too, and I decided that I would like a happy medium.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's just because I'm boring. No, I'm not as smart.
No, it's good to have a medium for your health.
Right.
Yeah. We're getting pretty deep into this episode. Do you want to do something fun to end?
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do next. Apparently you have a surprise for me, and I'm so excited.
You know, maybe tone down the excitement a little bit. Lower your expectations.
Trying.
Okay, so I was thinking earlier today that Gus, being such a calculated, intelligent, well thought out person, that it might be interesting if you were to kind of step into his mind, become Gus, and answer some questions.
Oh boy. Okay, so I'm gonna pretend I'm Gus and
yes,
think
and
like
I'm
him
and, yeah,
when
and
I answer.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask you some would you rather questions.
Okay, but I need to answer it from Gus's perspective.
Yeah, you're gonna answer as Gus, and you're gonna tell us why.
Okay.
Okay. So, what?
Sorry. I didn't know this was gonna require so much effort on my part.
Oh yeah, it's not as fun as I made it out to be.
No, I'm excited. Okay.
Okay. Would you rather own a worldwide chain of chicken restaurants and be wealthy beyond your wildest dreams, or own a few small restaurants that you use to funnel drugs into the United States?
B, right?
I don't know. You're Gus.
Because I would want to own a few restaurants and funnel drugs into the United States, because that would probably make me even wealthier than point A.
Okay. That was a lame question.
Yeah.
Would you rather fight a pack of wolves with a rubber mallet or fight one 85-pound spider with a tennis racket?
Say the first one more time.
Okay. Fight a pack of wolves with a rubber mallet, or fight an 85-pound spider with a tennis racket.
Okay. I would fight the spider, the massive spider with a tennis racket.
Why?
Because I don't know, just like when I picture it, I feel like I can inflict more damage on one thing and then it'll die.
Yeah,
It's I think because it's a big, powerful spider that needs to be put in its place. So me killing it, even if it's just with a racket, you know, I feel a lot of the power of the racket and, you know, like I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's an efficiency to one enemy versus multiple enemies.
Right. And
All
it's
right.
one big enemy, and I want to be known as the someone who defeated the big enemy.
Mm-hmm. Hector.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can see why he would go for A too, but mostly B.
Would you rather eat your dog whole or chew your lip off?
Would my dog be alive? That probably doesn't matter.
I think you can kill it first, but you got to eat the whole thing.
Oh, okay. And the second one was what?
Chew your lip off.
I would definitely chew my lip off.
As Gus?
Yeah.
Why?
Because a dog is loyal, and I'm loyal to my dog. I don't eat my dog.
Oh, interesting.
I harm myself if that's the case, but even that harm it's not that big of a harm. It's not a big enough harm to put me in front of my dog.
I think he eats his dog.
Really?
Yeah, because the chewing his lip off is gonna first of all cause too many people to ask questions.
True.
And also it's gonna mess with his appearance, which is so important to him.
But he can just like get it reconstructed. It's not a money.
I guess he's got the money. I imagine the scenario where he's like,
right.
He like sits down and he puts a bib on and then just like stoically eats his dog. Yeah.
Sad.
Which is sad, but not terribly out of place for Gus and the terrible things he does.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe he would only eat his dog if his dog accidentally like unveiled him in some stupid way.
Yeah. Okay, last one.
Yeah.
Would you rather shower with your dad until the day he dies or rely on your mom's breast milk for food until she dies?
I think Gus would shower with his dad because if he drinks his mother's breast milk, so fucking weird. If he drinks his mother's breast milk, then he's depending too much on someone. But then if he showers with his dad, he can help his dad shower when he gets older. Because I don't think Gus wants to rely on people too much. Like he likes relying, like, you know, he likes delegating tasks, you know, good leadership skills. But he's the main person in power and he doesn't want to rely on another person solely.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to business, you know. So I think if he were to drink his mother's milk, that's kind of a symbol to me of relying on someone.
Mm-hmm. Well, in either scenario, he's got an easy out by killing whichever parent, because then he's done. It's only until they die.
Yeah, that's true.
If he really hates, whatever. You know,
then he'll just, okay.
I was hoping this game would be more fun.
It was, I think it would be more fun if we were answering from our own perspectives, but this is all about Gus, so we have to get really serious and think about Gus, and he's a very serious person, and he's a logical person. That's why, because we're answering it in super logical ways based on what he would answer. If we were talking about a different villain that was just kind of off the wall and just didn't really do things in a logical way, it would probably be more fun because they don't have like a set reason; they just do it. But Gus always has a reason. Yeah. And we have to think about that reason. Yeah.
This has been a very serious episode.
I know.
But I think a good one.
Indeed.
Yeah. A lot of deep thought here.
Well, on that note, on that 9-hour work day, and then talking about Gus Fring, I think it's time to go to bed.
Yeah. But before you go to bed...
it's only 6:50 here.
Oh, it's 9:50 here. It's close to my bedtime. Yeah. And I've had a glass of whiskey, so I'm ready to set in here.
Right.
Before we go, we've got to tell you that If you have your own thoughts about Gus, you can share them with us on Facebook or Twitter. We're Next Door Villain. We also have an email, nextdoorvillain@gmail.com.
Ooh. Yeah, tell us what you think. And on our Twitter, you can also vote whoever had the best 30-second summary.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This episode was written, produced, pretty much everything by us, Joe Anderson and Tiana Hennings.
And that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Bye.